Good morning. So today is Sunday, December 13th. It is day 13 of Vlogmas, and it is also the third Sunday of Advent. And I am really having a slow start this morning. It's about 9:15, and I haven't even opened up the blinds yet. And I don't know, I'm moving kind of slow this morning. I didn't sleep super well last night, so I'm feeling more tired than usual this morning, which is frustrating because, I really tried to rest yesterday, and then did not sleep all that well. So, kind of off to a tough start this morning. I'm not really sure what all I'm going to get up to today. Again, probably not a ton because pandemic and fatigue and all of those things really make this not the most interesting of times. I do want to spend some time working on Philip's sweater because, like I mentioned yesterday, I do have some concern about being able to finish that. So, we'll just kind of see how today goes. Okay, so I had been talking to you guys about this visual theology project that I was having to work on. And I also had said that I would share it with you because it actually involved knitting. So I am going to do that right now. So this is going to get theological. So if you're not interested in that, feel free to skip this portion and move on. I completely understand if that's not your jam. But, if you're even a little bit curious, definitely stick around because I had a lot of fun doing this and I thought that it actually worked out fairly well. So one of my courses that I was taking this semester was an introduction to theology. So just a basic theology class. It's one of the foundational requirements, and that's what it is. And the whole, kind of one of the fundamental things in the class was this idea of theology as a way of describing God, right? And we can only describe God with what we have available to us. So my way of describing God comes from my experience, my words, my, life. Your way of describing God is different because we have different experiences and different words. And so we're limited by what our experience is. Part of the challenge with theology is opening yourself up to, one, being aware of that limitation, but also being open to the way that other people describe and experience God. And words, in many cases, fail. And so my professor was challenging us to move to something visual as a way of kind of laying out our theology. And so that's what this project centered around. There were 3 parts to it. This is the third part. The first 2 parts we did line drawings, and I don't draw. I'm not artistic in that regard, at all. And so he opened up the final one to whatever medium we wanted. So at first I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And in class, someone mentioned, so we, just to clarify, we can use something besides drawing, if we wanted to use string or yarn. And as soon as she said yarn, light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, I can knit. And then I was like, but it needs to be something small and quick, because I need to get this done, in time. And what am I gonna do? And the idea was basically to like kind of lay out our theology, like our Christian theology, in these images. And so, like I said, I went with knitting. Now I don't have this that I can hold up and show because it was just really abstract. So I may put in the photo that I took, that I submitted with my paper. So we're gonna begin with God and creation, like kind of before creation happens. And what I did was I took like a white yarn to kind of represent God and divinity, and that was kind of around the outside. And then on the inside is this purple yarn, and that purple yarn is what is depicting what creation is. And it's all kind of just loose because, one, we don't know what form God has. So there is no form depicted here because we don't know what form God might be in. And then when you read the book of Genesis, and it says that the earth was formless and void. And so the creation itself is formless, it's just kind of in there and loose. So the next panel is then moving on to the doctrine of creation, specifically looking at the creation of humanity. And so I knit 2 tiny socks to depict humanity. So now creation has a form, right? And what I did is, for you knitters, you will be able to look at this and see, they're both little socks, but they're not the same. There's little differences in the socks. And it's to signify that humanity, while we all have the same form, we are not the same. We are not identical. There's differences in each of us. There are 2 socks, not to represent male and female, because in my theological understanding, I don't define God as being gendered. I think God defies gender, and so I didn't want that necessarily represented here, because I think in many ways, binary ways of describing things are problematic. But instead, there are 2 to represent the fact that we were created to be in community with each other. We were not created to be alone. We were created to be together and to be in harmony with one another. All right, so there we have creation. The next portion is the fall. So, what happened? Like, why aren't we, frolicking with God in the Garden of Eden anymore? And so to depict that, what I did is I took the socks and I cut holes in them. And then I kind of had, it unraveling a little bit. And both socks are cut and have holes and are unraveling because, in some theological circles, people like to place the blame on the female for the fall. But in actuality, both fell together. One did not fall and the other stay fine. They both fell. So both aspects of creation are now fallen and flawed, and they still have their form, but they're not complete. They're not, something is missing now, and it's kind of unraveling a little bit. And in my image, they're also far apart from each other, and one is above the other, because part of what happens in the fall is we no longer reflect the love of God. And when we love, with perfect love and the way we were created, everyone is equal, right? There is no one above the other. Everyone is equal, and we're in community. With the fall, we now no longer are in community. We put ourselves above others, and we create systems of dominance and oppression. So that is what is being depicted with the fall. The 4th frame represents the doctrine of the incarnation, and that doctrine is basically the idea of like Jesus, and what does that mean? That, well, it's basically Jesus. So for that one, I knit another sock because God took on the form of humanity in Christ. And I basically held double the two different yarns, which are depicted up here, to represent the humanity and the divinity of Christ, and how those are interwoven in together, and you can't distinguish one from the other. And it is in the image of humanity, but it's different than, the other images. Likewise, the form was not the form of the dominant fallen humanity. It was in the form of the oppressed version of humanity, because Jesus was not in the ruling elite. Jesus was more of a marginalized individual, and he also associated with the marginalized. And so through that marginalization, Jesus and God are experiencing the fullness of humanity. The final image is the image of resurrection, not Jesus's resurrection, but like humanity's resurrection, like the restoration that happens. And then this was my final stock that depicted the resurrection. So basically what's happened now is the flawed portion has been replaced, and through the grace of God, through Jesus Christ, we are now restored back to what we were at creation in form. But it's not exactly like it was. We still have the holes from our suffering, from what we've gone through. They're still there, but as they are, now depicted in this like lace motif, they are now beautiful. And this also like reflects the idea that when Christ was resurrected, he still bore the marks from the crucifixion on his body. So we may still bear the marks. So that was basically really quickly, probably not explained all of that well, the way that I used knitting to express my theology. So there you have it. I hope, I hope you found it interesting. And maybe you will, the next time you're knitting, it'll make you think a little bit more about something beyond just the yarn and the needles. So, all right, I have talked way too long, and that's that.